Two questions. One, what makes an opening sequence memorable? And two, what makes an opening sequence good? Today we're going to be talking about the latter question there on what makes an opening sequence good. Now if you clicked on this video expecting a Watch Mojo top 10, and all I gotta say is what my mother says to me way too often, I'm disappointed. Now let's get right into it. Opening sequences have been around forever. Originally they were used to introduce the cast or give information regarding the show, like seen with the Brady Bunch as a dated example there. But with the rise of streaming services like HBO, Hulu, and Netflix, they aren't doing that anymore as episodes aren't coming out weekly. They're all there for you, so you can either decide to binge it out in one sitting or you can watch it as time goes for you. There are two main components that make up a banging ass opening sequence. Now for each of these components, I'll give an example of a show that I've watched that really exemplifies that best. Now I do want to say that I'm going to be talking about more serious TV shows or dramas versus like anime or something like that, as it's a completely different video that I probably won't do. The first component that makes a good opening sequence is the music, as opening sequences have evolved to have a more dramatic effect recently. Visuals are incredibly important in giving context to the show, but I think music is even more important than these visuals. The music played in an opening sequence sets the mood and the tone for the entire show. A good show that I think exemplifies this component best is Succession, which is an HBO show. Right away the music comes out of the gate, big dick swinging here with some killer piano chords, and I'd be lying if I said that I knew anything about music theory, but I do have access to a nice little thing called the internet. This masterpiece is composed of 3 parts: an out-of-tune piano, heavy strings, and an 808 bass drum. Now while that may seem like a weird combination of 3 things, it works perfectly in this intro. Now, it's weird because the piano and the strings give it a classical instrument feel, while the 808 bass drum is more seen in like hip hop and rap music commonly today, but they all work together to create such a masterful piece overall. And for me, the first time that I listened to this, I didn't even know there was an 808 bass drum in this. It really took when I looked further in doing research before I made this video, I found out that this 808 bass drum is a part of this, which was really cool because it helps the rhythm and the melody of the opening sequence really continue and keeps it going. The opening sequence does an amazing job at setting the tone for this, as off a quick Google search, you can tell that the show is labeled in the genre of satire, which no, the show is not similar to Rick and Morty in being satirical.
I'm Pickle Rick!
God, this shit is still the funniest thing I've ever seen today. Like, he turned himself into a pickle. The opening sequence sets a tone that is dark and intriguing. Now, I don't know if this is because I've seen this show before, but whenever I hear this, I feel like I'm at the top of a penthouse looking down on everybody with like a god complex. I don't know why I associate that with this, but that's how this song makes me feel. This does a great job at summarizing the tone of the show, as it's really unsure if the show is a dark comedy or a drama, and it's argued either way. But the opening sequence can play into both hands of these, which makes it so much more perfect to be an opening sequence for this show. Before I get on to the next component, I do want to mention the composer of the piece, Nicholas Britell, or as I like to call him, Nicky fucking B. He brings the piece back at different key points in the series, and he changes it a little bit, whether it's moving it up an octave or moving it down or slowing the piece down, and he changes all of this at key points. So when the characters are at their climax or the characters are at their lowest point, he'll bring the piece back, the opening sequence back, and he'll change it a little bit. And I think that just adds a whole nother layer of appreciation for the opening sequence, because when you're watching it, you're so involved in these characters and something happens, and then you hear that piano chord come right in. I think it's just incredible. I think it just makes it so much better and so much more appreciative of the work that he put in. The second component that makes an opening sequence good is the visuals. And as I previously mentioned, the visuals add context to the show. Now, I wasn't sure which show I really wanted to talk about that exemplified this best, but I decided to go with Mindhunter. The other show that I was thinking that really showed this was Narcos, which I might talk about a little bit at the end also. But first, we'll talk about Mindhunters. Besides being some solid ass ASMR there, it does a perfect job at giving context to the show. You see an unknown person setting up a tape recorder, and that gives context of the time period of the show, as they're not using the newest iPhone 10X and XX or whatever they decide. And in between cuts of this person setting up this tape recorder, you see dead, mutilated bodies. Now, I'm not going to show specific points of that, so if you want to watch it on your own, I'll have the links in the description of both of these intros so you can check them out on your own and get that full grasp of what these shows' intro sequences are and what these shows could be about. This tells the audience what the show is about. Now, this is obvious to me because I've seen the show, but I know it's about they're using this tape recorder to get verbal documentation of what these serial killers did. So I think it's perfect to have it such a calming, them setting up the tape recorder and then these splices of these serial killers talking about what they've done and adding visual aids to what they've done. That just makes it weird because it almost feels like that these serial killers are like reliving their experience from talking about it, which I'm sure is happening. But it just is so cool and such an eerie, interesting, and intriguing opening sequence. Now, as mentioned prior, I do want to give an honorable mention to Narcos, so I will talk about that a little bit. Soy el fuego que arde tu piel. Soy el agua que mata tu sed. This is a culmination of both of those components working together beautifully together. The visual aspect is giving context into the show with it being a montage of cocaine, drugs, and money. The audio is a smooth Latin song called Tuyo by Rodrigo Amarante, which hopefully I pronounced right, but I probably didn't. We'll keep going. When he was asked how he drew inspiration for the song, he stated that he wrote the song from Pablo Escobar's mother's perspective. He used love songs that Pablo Escobar's mother would have listened to as a frame of reference to write this. Also, if you decide to translate these lyrics from Spanish to English, he uses a lot of words that go against each other, and it really depicts the dichotomy of Pablo Escobar as he was a human, but he also was such a monster in this drug trafficking industry. That's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed me being a music snob for however long this decides to be. But if you liked it, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.